outside the places which were purely decorative and which only gave rank at court on ceremonial occasions and on administering oaths of office, all offices required continual presence and unwearied attention and a custom of audiences with the master. Now, do we form any idea of the administration of the empire then amounted to? The Prince Arch-Chancellor Cambacérès, without having any ministerial office, is constantly consulted. He it is who, in the absence of the emperor, centralizes the work of the ministers, directs the deliberations of the council of state, takes the measures when urgency requires. When the emperor is present, he is not contented to hold a great position and to possess one of the best houses in Paris. On every question he gives advice which has been ripely considered, which is not inspired by a wish to please, and which is worth carefully weighing. Above everything, he is a man who acts according to law and is a maker of laws. The arch-treasurer Lebrun, much consulted at first, and who, more than any man in the world, contributed to keep at a distance the untrustworthy financiers whom he understood in a marvelous way, was during the empire generally entrusted with the government of recently annexed provinces. The other grand dignitaries seldom appeared employed as they were the greater part of the time abroad, but at all hours the Secretary of State appears, through whom pass all the acts concerning ministerial departments, all the decisions which the emperor arrives at proprio motu, and all the signatures. Everything which has received its definite shape in the private cabinet is sent off, registered, classified at the office of the Secretary of State. There are copyists in numbers, people writing a fine hand, scrupulous clerks who would take to heart the responsibility of any delay or error of transmission with any other sovereign under any other form of government. The Secretary of State would be the most important man of the empire. With Napoleon, he remains a head clerk who ought to possess punctuality, order, and exactitude, but who was not asked to furnish ideas, nor even to develop the ideas of the master, still less to enlarge on them in conversation. The arrangement, excellent with such a man as Napoleon, is execrable when it concerns any other than Napoleon. Various people occupied this post of confidence about the emperor. One only filled it because he brought to it, in addition to absolute devotion and exemplary diligence, a complete, not to say active submission. He had not to think for himself, but to gather up the thoughts of his master and to take note of his acts. In this he excelled, being indefatigable, always ready, always attentive, displaced and put at the head of ministerial departments. He must have been less successful, for he brought to them just the qualities which were so precious to the secretaryship of state. He had the honor of being hateful to Monsieur de Talleyrand, who never ceased lancing epigrams at him, one especially celebrated. There is only one man more stupid than Monsieur Marat, said Talleyrand. Who was that then? Asked an intimate. It is the Duc de Bassano. This hatred is easily explained. Marat possessed two virtues which the Prince of Benevento could not tolerate: courage and fidelity. The Secretary of State followed the Emperor on campaign in his visits to the country everywhere. At Paris, he lived close to the Tuileries on the Place du Carrousel and was sent for every moment. It was he who had by far the greatest authority among the ministers. After him, the Grand Judge, Minister Justice, that little Renier, formerly an advocate at Nancy, becoming Count of Grenau, and then Duc de Masson, one of the most considerable personages of the empire, although in truth, beyond his participation in Brumaire 18th, one is unable to discover his merits. At least he possesses exactitude and a taste for work. This was necessary in order to give good justice to 130 departments, to superintend the staff of more than 500 tribunals of first instance and of 36 imperial courts, to introduce without jars in the annexed states the use of the Code Napoleon, to look after the interests of those who in every place make their living by justice, to regulate their privileges and to punish their encroachments. Every pardon granted by the emperor is guaranteed by a parchment signed by the emperor. Every nomination above a certain grade is signed by him. No work of advancement is approved without investigation made by him at the Cour de Cassation. For example, it is forbidden to appoint a magistrate without a presentment emanating from the actual chiefs of the court. Try to imagine, after that, what the portfolio of justice represents. In foreign affairs, all the dispatches, wherever they come from, pass into the hands of the emperor, who alone forms his line of policy. He talks over the dispatches with Talleyrand, who in his turn talks them over with his subordinates, looks through them again, reproduces in them with singular skill the characteristic expressions of the master, and takes them back to the Tuileries. With the successes of Talleyrand, the effort of Napoleon is still greater. Champigny understands badly. Marat does not understand at all. Champigny represents the idea. Marat represents the words literally, which is worse. Talleyrand was a traitor. Champigny is faithful. Marat is devoted. But Talleyrand understands. No doubt the correspondence on foreign affairs 80 years ago was much more moderate in volume compared with what it is at present. The posts were much less numerous and still, when reduced in number by the state of war, communications much less frequent, few or no affairs relating to private people, consulates few in number, hardly any navigation. But to follow up a negotiation, how much more attention and method was required? When from the dispatch of a courier to his return at least a month passed, and when during that month the progress of events had completely altered the chessboard.